Coogs House, I know the saying is easy come, easy go, but man, with the way this transfer portal thing is working, I just don't know if that's the case all the time.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we can place Locked On Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. That's where you found us. It is so good to see you again. Remember to subscribe. We're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. And the next one is 2,000. Hit subscribe. Helps get there. Like, comment the video. Let us know you're in the contest. If, after talking about a little bit of a hodgepodge of topics, including the transfer portal tonight with the Houston Cougars, you just don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. In honor of Bailey Zappi winning on Thursday Night Football, do you know where Victoria is, or have you ever been to Victoria, Texas? Victoria, Texas. Now, today's episode is a bit of a hodgepodge. We've said the first two segments talking about the transfer portal and its impact on the Houston Cougars currently. Obviously, those things are very, very fluid and could be changing literally between the time this is recorded and the time you're hearing it. Those kind of things do happen very, very quickly. But then I'm going to spend the last segment talking about Houston's basketball game this weekend against Jackson State. I feel like we got to make sure we preview each and every game here. Things are going to be fun, I think, this weekend for the Cougs as they have their last game before that big game against A&M a week from Saturday. So without further ado, I guess we need to just jump on in. Big portal news on Thursday evening via a tweet from, I believe it was On3, one of the recruiting databases. Tweet out Matthew Golden will be entering the transfer portal. Yes, the same Matthew Golden who just tweeted the other day that he was 1,000% committed to the Houston Cougars. The same Matthew Golden that Dana Holgorsen told us in his media availability shortly before his final days as a Houston Cougar that Matt could go out and net six-figure type salaries, $500,000 potentially at some places, right, in NIL money. And Matthew Golden's the big name here. I want to quickly run through a name of other folks in the transfer portal from the University of Houston as it currently stands. One is Jet Huff, a 2022 quarterback that you probably haven't thought much about because he was not ever going to see the field this past season. Cooper Hamilton was a backup kicker, 2021 recruit. Moses Alexander, 2020 cornerback. Ampalisi Fifita, 2018 defensive lineman, giant guy, hadn't gotten the field a whole ton. And Aaron Willis, a 2021 linebacker. Tyler Johnson started at right guard last year. Ruben Unije started right tackle last year. And now Matthew Golden. So you obviously a pretty big, obviously we'll see, I should say, a pretty big discrepancy between those folks. And amongst even the folks within that discrepancy, Matthew Golden stands out. Matthew Golden stands out as different. Matthew Golden stands out because he impacted winning in a football game in a way that I think had a lot of us excited about what comes next for him. Now, whenever a kid enters the transfer portal, and you may differ from me on this, but I have a hard time cheering against a college kid that gave any amount of time to the Houston Cougar football program because, frankly, I can't fault a kid if they're doing something for like going out and making a large amount of money, the six-figure dollar amount, a few $100,000 amount to do something good for their family. I'm not going to fault a kid for that. I'm never going to. I think the thing that's a little different with Matthew Golden that has some people a little upset, not me, Matthew, not me, but has people upset as we're explaining the situation a little bit, is this idea that he tweeted out the other day. He was 1,000% committed after the people started getting worried about the Dana Holgorsen comment, right? I now have a slightly different reading on that. The comment was made by one Dana Holgorsen. Duarte wrote about it, and Duarte writes about things very, very well. I don't mean that as a slight, but Duarte wrote about it as Holgorsen is pointing out that Matthew Golden could go make a lot of money in the transfer portal. And then very quickly dispel that rumor that he was leaving at the time. Matthew Golden tweeted that he was 1,000% committed. I think with hindsight, or armed with hindsight now, it feels very apparent that Matthew Golden was 1,000% committed to the guy that recruited him to campus in the first place. And that's his prerogative and totally fine, right? Some of this will be natural. We'll talk more about it in a second, but some of this will be natural. That just will happen. And I can't fault a guy for doing that. Frankly, in some ways, Matthew Golden was a highly touted prospect, but some of these guys, Dana Holgerson and staff was like a group of people in a small list or short list that thought they had a chance to make it big time, right? And so I can totally see why guys are committed to those guys. Even if we've moved on as a program, even if I feel fairly strongly moving in the right direction as a program, even I think that the hiring goes on that helped improve the program, right? I can see why these guys would feel some sort of attachment to the staff that brought them in, on top of the dollar amount, on top of those things. Now, with that said, Matthew Golden was a difference maker. He played the position I think Houston's the deepest at on their roster. The wide receiver room is crazy talented. We saw that, frankly, in that the wide receivers continue to play well after Matthew Golden left the season hurt, right? You bring back Joseph Manjack, theoretically bring back Sam Brown. They're both guys that have transferred into Houston. I believe that they would have to sit out a year if they transferred out because some of the coaching, hiring, and firing rules have been altered a little bit in light of the one-time free transfer rule, right? So those guys transferred in. I'm still working to see, but I think they'd have to sit out a year if they went anywhere else. You also have I missed Dalton Carnes in my list of guys. Oh, whoops. Dalton Carnes is in the transfer portal. Dalton Carnes was another starting receiver. Came in off the bench initially for Matt Golden, but went back to my receiver room. We got those two, Manjack and Sam Brown. You also have Boogie Johnson. You also have Jonah Wilson, right, who saw flashes of there at the end of the season. And then you have one of the highest rated prospects to ever come through Houston, who spent part of the season last year hurt and ultimately just redshirted on the year because it was his freshman season, Mikhail Harrison-Pilot. On the whole, before you even talk about a transfer in, before you even talk about a high prospect recruit, you've got a pretty good receiver room coming back without Matthew Golden. I think the Houston Cougars will be okay. And as I look at this, like Dalton Carnes played some, and I think he was pretty good. But I get it. Tyler Johnson played some, and he was a decent pass blocking guard, but truthfully, Houston could use an upgrade at guard. Houston had a lot of pass pressure in those B gap areas. So, I could see if Houston is not so concerned with that. I do think bringing Tank Jenkins back and who is filing a waiver to see if he can get back on the roster is really important because with Ruben Unije also on the transfer portal, that means your left tackle will be going pro. Your left guard is waiting on a waiver. Your left guard is transferring out. Your center is graduated, done playing, Jack Freeman. Your right guard is waiting on a waiver, and your right tackle is ultimately also transferring. Now, Ruben and right tackle transferring out is interesting because Ruben, I think we all had high hopes for coming into last season because he had spurts of playing really, really well in the prior seasons to that. For whatever reason, it was not his best showing on the year. Ruben pretty much had a penalty a game, and for every highlight he had, it felt like there was also a oh, come on, Ruben type of moment. I do think there's a good football player in Ruben Unije. I don't mean to say that he can't continue to grow into one, but he had a really, really rough 2023 campaign, and frankly, if he wants to keep playing, probably needs to have a much better 2024 campaign. It looks like he's out there looking for it. I did notice that both Unije and Johnson, the offensive lineman in the portal for Houston, look like they've got at least visits scheduled, if not offers to Colorado. Sometimes tweets are hard to read between the lines on and stuff like that. Colorado also recently signed an offensive lineman transfer portal, so we'll see how those kinds of things go. Would be awkward to play against them in the near future, to say the least. But on the whole, it's more about replacing their experience than maybe the skill sets they brought. Matthew Golden, you're replacing the skill sets they brought. It's a really, really difficult task to do. Now, if you're really, really smart when it comes to sports and stats and things like that, one thing that might not be quite as difficult for you to do is to go prove your knowledge at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, because right now they have all these different stat lines you can pick more than or less than on various things. So you can look at like receptions for touchdowns plus 3-pointers made between Travis Kelce and LeBron James. And if the more than less than line was set at like, let's say 10.5, Kelce has 7 catches, LeBron James has 4 made threes. I almost said 4 touchdowns. Then suddenly you're over that number, right? You said it was more than because you were smart and you picked that. Boom, you make money. Right now, Prize Picks also has cool reboot policy where if a guy gets hurt in the first half, they can get rebooted and not count against you if they don't come back in the second half because it's that kind of injury. They're the only daily fantasy sports platform with that. So make sure you check them out. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code lockedoncollege for our first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for our first time deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, go get some winning today. All right, now, I think it's interesting because people are comparing what's better or worse in this instance. Having offensive line entirely replaced, losing a key playmaker like Matthew Golden. What's next? I will say this much. I don't have anything official to report. I'm just working on vibes here and working on these things tend to go. I would imagine there is another major playmaker on one side of the ball or the other that will enter the transfer portal at some point in the next week or 10 days. Generally speaking, when a head football coach changes, that's kind of just how it goes in modern football. I understand that people are excited about Willie Fritz and everyone's excited to see what happens. And there's a really positive spin on the program right now going a year or two in the Big 12. And frankly, you think, you got a guy that's won everywhere he's been and has transferred programs wherever he's been. And I could sell anyone on Fritz. I think it's a good hire. But if you're a 20-year-old kid, you got brought into play under this one system for this one set of coaching staff or whatever. They said they believed in you. You bought into it. And you see this rebuild coming with a program builder. You're like, okay, let me check this out. And you're like, oh, it took a couple years at Tulane, to really turn that program around. How long is it going to take here? How long do I have left? How much of my career will cross over with that? Does this guy even want me? Does he want people he's recruiting? Who's he bringing in? We've seen Tulane players enter the transfer portal. Is he going to want them over me because that's his guy? It's all normal questions to ask. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's questions that have to lead to guys transferring in mass. But I think it's worth keeping in mind that when a player, whether they're Matthew Golden or some third, fourth string guy that didn't see the field last year, enters the portal, the truth is that they're doing because in that moment or at this moment, they think that's what's best for them in their career. And the program that Houston's in is in a bit of a flux, right? And so you're looking to maneuver out of that situation, get to something a little more settled. Totally get it. Maybe you're looking to move up and get somewhere you can play some. Totally get it. Maybe you do get that big dollar amount that the Houston NIL does not quite have you promised yet. Totally get it. It's just a natural way these things go. It is a fairly normal thing. Sucks to see Matthew go. Sucks to see in some ways Ruben and Tyler and Dalton and all the guys go. I get it. But that's the way the cookie crumbles when you swap coaches. That's the way modern football will work until they change up the NIL thing in major form or fashion. Right? Now, I did do some looking into how college football teams have done when they completely replace the offensive line. Preliminary results say not great. So I think some of those results are going to be skewed because in a post-transfer portal world, it'll be a little different. But losing Tyler and Ruben, potentially Tank on top of graduating Jack and watching Patrick go pro, good for Patrick. He's going to be a really good pro. Can't wait to watch him play on Sundays. Houston Texans, frankly, could really use him. But replacing all 5 guys, if Tank's waiver does not go through, is going to be a really difficult challenge. Cannot stress that enough. I think they got a great young center. We saw Demetrius Hunter, Pancake Hunter. I'm going to keep calling him Pancake because now Dana's gone. Dana want to take that nickname away, but he's gone now. I'm going to keep calling him Pancake. Pancake Hunter in the middle is going to be great. We saw him play some at the end of the season when Jack was out with a concussion. And we certainly saw him play in a couple of blowouts. Pancake can play. Pancake was a crazy high-ranked recruit coming out of high school. West Orange Stark, a storied program. I think we'll be okay there. It's about filling in the other spots, right? So, like, big body like Carson Jones might still be a year away developmentally. We'll see. We'll see what things look like in the spring. Transfer portal guys, who do you pull in? What kind of guys do you look at? I look at a guy like Savion Bird, right? He's a guard from Duncanville High School, powerhouse program up in the DFW area. He went to OU. He's now in the transfer portal, leaving OU. He started a few games at Oklahoma before ultimately getting pushed out of that role. I can't quite tell if he had like some sort of an injury that got him out of that role. If things really heat up with him in Houston, I guess I would look more into that. But interesting thing to look at for sure. Obviously, he's a DFW kid though, so maybe he wants to go to, it's crystal ball to SMU right now. I could see SMU, TCU, something like that. A little closer to home, Omarion Agbajian from Katy is one of the best run blocking offensive linemen in FCS football in the transfer portal, right? I could see him saying Willie Fritz understands the differences, and he's like, hey, I can play Power 5 football. I know I'm good enough. That guy coach can see it, and if Fritz agrees with it, I'm not one to argue with him. He's seen all the different levels of football, right? Does he go get Agbajian? I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce it correctly, darn it, if he ends up coming. But from Katy, kid gets to come home, play Power 5 football, could be a great story, right? 6'3", 308, again, high-end run blocking lineman, and we know Fritz likes to do that, right? Can you build up with those kinds of guys in the portal? We shall see. I do think it's worth pointing out, though, that like the calculus on all this has changed. So, like, when I look at all these numbers about how poorly teams have played and they lose all 5 offensive linemen in one offseason, basically any number from before 2020 almost feels moot, not because the teams, didn't suffer, didn't struggle, didn't whatever, but because they didn't face the same they faced a more uphill battle, I should say, than current teams do. Fritz is already on the recruiting trail all over the state of Texas, all the greater Houston area. I could easily see him and his son Wes putting together a pretty good transfer class on the excitement they're building, and putting together an offensive line group that comes in and at least helps sustain drives, doesn't commit penalties, and those kinds of things. Fritz said he wants to be a disciplined team that does not commit penalties. That starts up front, and we know the importance of that. I say all that to say that I think the more daunting task is obviously to replace the offensive line than it's to replace Matthew Golden. Wide receiver room is strong. The offensive line room is losing a lot of talent, a lot of people, frankly. But in modern football, I do think the comparison between the two is a legitimate comparison. Matthew Golden is, frankly, that good of a wideout. We'll see, he was constantly demanding a double team in basically everything he was doing. He did not have the sophomore year we wanted, but he had a fairly strong sophomore year. 6 receiving touchdowns, 2 kickoff return touchdowns. Again, constantly being bracket covered. And so I think it's worth pointing out, like, other guys were open because of the way coverage is played, Matthew. Sammy had a lot of yards and catches being the third option because he's an incredibly talented guy to have been a, quote, third option. He's really like a 1C, right? And so without Matthew, those things will change. Now, does Mikhail Harrison-Pilot step up? Hadn't gotten to watch him play much Houston Cougar Red, but we shall see. And so I do think this is a comparison. And I think it's a comparison worth having. It's a comparison we have to talk about all off-season long. But I wanted to make sure we had an update on where we are. Other names I looked at in the portal, Michael Baton, Caleb Douglas. Caleb Douglas from Missouri City Hightower. He was a 3-star recruit, went to Florida. He's a 6'3" wide receiver. Now, that's not quite Matthew Golden's type of receiver, but can we bring him back? We shall see. Back to Houston, I should say. We shall see. And I want to talk some about a lot of the transfer portal stuff as more stuff comes out, as more stuff goes on, as the weeks continue, right? There'll be a lot more information on that over the course of the next couple of weeks. We'll see a lot more guys enter, a lot more guys commit. But let's talk about one well-oiled machine on campus. That is the Houston Cougar basketball program. Takes on Jackson State this Saturday. But first, before we even get to that, let's talk about your well-oiled machine, your ride or die, because passion, drive, and patience are what bring home the winning trophy. It also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, leveled up to peak performance from supercharged and roof racks and exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so this weekend, Houston plays Jackson State, and I want to point out a couple things. One, Jackson State is 2-6 and currently 262 in KenPom. There are only 330, just over 330 teams on KenPom ranked in Division I basketball. So I could see how many people watching the game like, oh my God, why are we even playing these guys? I appreciate from a culture development program, frankly, just a more like playing SWAC and MEAC teams every year is a good thing for college basketball. Teams like Houston and Kelvin Sampson playing these games every year is a positive for the sport. I'm not going to take any arguments against it. It just is. Now, in particular to Jackson State, while they're 2-6 currently, they played a really difficult non-conference schedule. They're actually projected to be competing to win the SWAC this year. Prairie View and Texas Southern are all projected based on KenPom's analytical research and projections. They do database projections to all tie at 12-6 and win the conference. And frankly, there were several people, when you go through people picking, like pickers of sorts, picking the SWAC and picking who went to the SWAC, that picked Jackson State as well. So don't let the record deceive you. Don't let the KenPom rating deceive you. This very well might be a 16 seed or 15 seed, but this could be a tournament team, right? And frankly, there's been some times where I'm like, I don't know if that team is a tournament team on our schedule. Jackson State very well could be one. Now, the KenPom projection, if you can't tell, I spent some time researching them on KenPom. KenPom has Houston winning this one at 82-55. That means based on projections of data and how matchups should work out, Houston should win 82-54. I said 55 a second ago. 82-54. I'm sorry, I misread my notes. I will say that I actually think Houston probably wins by a little more than that. I think it's probably closer to 90 to closer to like 45. Not say that I just think the defense is suffocating. I just think the defense is that suffocating. Now, they've got some good basketball players over Jackson State. I think their bigger problem will be depth. And so, frankly, if they're ready to go and play and they have like fresh legs and it's an afternoon game and they're kind of, amped on adrenaline to play the number 3 team in the country in the AP poll, they could score some points. Ken Evans is a redshirt junior. He's a 6'5", wing perimeter guy that plays a little bit in the 15 to 18 foot area. He's really, really strong. I didn't get you weight that looked accurate on him. He's really, really strong, well-built shoulders. He attacks off the bounce and finishes what I call tough finishes, not crafty finishes, but a bunch of different types of tough finishes around the rim through contact. He's getting 20 points per game, leading them in points. Again, he is really, really good at getting to the rack. In their starting lineup, I wonder if he gets Emmanuel Sharp as far as the matchup starter goes. But he'll have a number of different guys on him. It'll be Arsenal some. It'll be Damian Dunn some. It'll be a bunch of different guys. You may even see Jawan Roberts on some, JoJo Tugler on some. Lots of different guys will cover Ken Evans. He's really talented. He also, should point out, has almost 5 rebounds and over 2.5 assists per game. He's a good basketball player. Really good basketball player. Chase Adams is their point guard, and he is tiny. He actually had a if you're a basketball viral videos guy, like 10 years ago, there's a video of a kid that looked like he was 5 years younger than everyone on the floor playing. Shirt, jersey, shorts, all way too big. And he was just dicing up other kids. Well, turns out those kids were his age. Chase Adams is about listed at 5'8". He looks close to 5'7" on screen. He's the point guard. He's always been that much smaller than his teammates and those people he's playing against. I will say, am impressed with his fearlessness. He pokes at steals, goes for deflections, thinks he's going to win every gamble. Very, very quick with the ball in his hands, super crisp. And he is crafty, where Ken Evans is strong. Chase Adams is crafty. Just 7 points per game, 3.5 assists per game. Had a couple of zeros in those categories because he played some talented teams and he's a little undersized. I'd imagine the size and strength of Jamal Shed is a little much for him, but we'll see. Their other big scorer, I guess, would be Jordan O'Neal. He's listed as their big guy at 6'7", but he's a 6'7" that wants to dunk everything. He won't dribble as much unless he's like backing you down a little bit to get closer to try and dunk something. Super, super high energy, super, super athletic, but just 6'7", so we're not getting outsized there. I think this is a great matchup for Houston, and frankly, I hope with some of that speed, athleticism, and strength that you see out of these guys on film, on video, I hope that kind of like helps get Houston a different type of test than, I don't know, than Rice was, or than Towson was, or than Utah was, or than other teams have been, because frankly, they've got athletes that just physically play differently. They use athleticism differently and things. Again, this could be a tournament team. It's a good test. And frankly, it's our last time to roll out some different test type of lineups before playing A&M in the Toyota Center on the 16th. Now, I'm hyping that game up because I think it's important. It's our biggest non-conference game right now because Xavier's lost a couple they shouldn't have lost. But I also think it's going to be important to see kind of how Houston stacks up with a Power 5 team that kind of made some noise last year as they head into a Power 5 conference. Right? What does this year's team look like against that kind of competition? Last warm-up, tune-up kind of game is Jackson State on Saturday. It's at 3 o'clock Central Time, I believe. I will be on my way back from a tournament, so I'll probably be watching the majority of that game on my phone because that's how we do things when I'm on the way back from a tournament. Looking forward to talking about that, recapping that game, getting ready for the A&M game, getting ready for all things happening with Willie Fritz, Houston Cougar football, and the transfer portal. It's a fun time on campus. You got a great basketball team. The girls started off hot this year as well. Volleyball wrapped up a great season. Football is on the rise and having fun making splashes across the country. All things are fun for the Cougs. If you want more fun today, I'm going to recommend Locked On Big 12. Drake's doing a great job there, talking about coaching hires, talking about transfer portal guys, talking about all kinds of fun stuff. So go check that out. Remember, Locked On Cougs is a proud member of Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Cougs, every day. Go Cougs!